your guest co-host, Gianni The Greek Corrales. And today we're going to talk about UFC 313, Alex Poatan Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev for the undisputed light heavyweight championship of the world. You got almost an anomaly in Poatan coming in from another sport, not much MMA experience. This guy rose up to be a double champ, and he's taking on someone who a lot of people think is the uncrowned champ and someone who's always had the talent, just hasn't put it together in the big fights yet. Third time might be the charm. Gianni The Greek, welcome back to Half the Battle.
Thanks for having me, Dan. My pleasure, brother. And we were just talking before on air. What a great card. So I appreciate you putting me on such a banger of a card to talk about these fights. And done a lot of work because it's one of those where I had to do the UFC on the line and still have to do our podcast for Fight Pass. So I think I'm prepared, ready to go. And I'm interested to see what you like. Help me confirm some of my leans, even more importantly, see if I can make some money. And appreciate everyone that is joining us. And yeah, all the support. Like I said, I'm a fan of your show, a fan of what you do. And I've known you for a couple of years now, man. So it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure's all mine. So without further ado, let's get right down to business, because in that main event, we got the champ, Alex Poatan Pereira. He's 12-2, taking on Magomed Ankalaev, who is 21-1. And currently they got it Poatan minus 115, the slight comeback, the minus money comeback on Ankalaev is minus 105. And such an incredible matchup because, like I was prefacing earlier, Gianni, experience counts so much in my book, right? And when you see an anomaly like Poatan, who comes into the UFC, barely any pro MMA experience. Now, granted, in kickboxing, he was the man, but to make that transition so seamlessly, and now you're a 2-division champ, it's like, I mean, like whatever he's doing, it truly defies logic. Because how many times have you seen guys come in from other sports? They don't pan out. Remember Gokhan Saki, Khalil Roundtree, an opponent of Pereira, welcomed Gokhan to the UFC, and it was not pretty. And there's been so many other examples along the way. So for this guy to do what he's done in such a short amount of time, I mean, he really could go down as one of the greats.
For sure. And no doubt. I mean, he's gotten the job done. And more importantly, he was thrown right in the deep end immediately. Like that's what sticks out to me more than anything else. If you just look at his opponent's record in the UFC, they're a combined 74-21-1. They won over almost 80% of their fights. So he didn't have it easy. I know there's the narrative, like of late, he's kind of had ideal matchups. He hasn't really had to face anyone that is multi-dimensional or is really going to test his grappling, really going to test his wrestling or anything like that. But the bottom line is, listen, no one's gotten rich fading Pereira. And from what I've seen sharp bettors fading him over his last few fights. Like if you look at the opening line, the closing line, even though he gets a lot of recreational bettors, that's the name they know, the highlight reel knockouts. So he's always going to get money at the betting window come fight night. I know a lot of sharps that have been fading him on the way up, at least over the last couple of fights, and it hasn't worked out well for him. I mean, the guy's undefeated as a favorite. He's 7-0. And more importantly, bettors have made money off him because his average closing line has been about minus 205. So it's not like he's been a minus 500 favorite every time out where you can't make money off him. You could only parlay him. So the fact he's been bettable, getting the job done, which usually is like not good for the sports books, especially a guy like that's that high profile, you're usually going to see the market catch up. And you're going to get a price on him that you just can't make any money. But like I said, his level of competition has been so elite that just hasn't been the case. But with that said, he's running into Ankalaev, I think, at a tough time. Ankalaev's been chomping at the bits for this matchup. And what sticks out to me most is the betting line. You see the respect. This is Ankalaev's obviously toughest test to date because he's never been an underdog. He's been a favorite in every single UFC fight. Average closing line, though, for him is like minus 425. And when you look over his last 4 fights, what's he, 2-0-1-1? So he hasn't really gotten people excited. And because of that, I think he's coming in a little bit undervalued. The betting line is what else sticks out to me. Every time Pereira has gone to where he's a high enough favorite that you could get plus money on Ankalaev, he's gotten bet. In this early in the week, it's not the recreational bettors that are betting Ankalaev. Like they started betting Ankalaev from last week, a lot of sharp guys. Whenever they saw plus money, they bit. Because most of the recreational bettors, they're betting college basketball every day. They're betting NBA, so they're not going to tie up their money 4 or 5 days, let alone a week plus in advance on Ankalaev. So definitely I think it's going to be another situation where you have the sharp bettors versus the public. And like I said, so far, no one's gotten rich fading Pereira. So it will be another time where the sharps get, eaten alive by the recreational bettors. I don't want to go long. It's no secret. I like the Ankalaev side. I bet the Ankalaev side. I thought he should actually, in this matchup, be upwards of close to a minus 150 favorite where he wins the fight 6 out of 10 times. I really do. I think this is a step up, meaning based on his level of competition, it will be a step up. But I just see the path to victory in the data where he's got multiple paths. And I think for Pereira, it's one way. And even though he's elite at that one way, I just think if Ankalaev, even in the stand-up, I don't think again, I'm not saying he's going to be a better striker than Pereira, but when you look at their knockdown rate, you look at their knockdown ratio, other than Pereira landing more per minute and having a better strike differential, and at this weight class where the power really matters, I don't think he's going to be at that huge of a disadvantage. And if he implements that grappling, I just think he could make it a really, really tough night on Pereira. The couple guys that I do respect, that I talk to, that do like the Pereira side, they think if he gets it done, he gets it done late. That what happens is it gets harder and harder for Ankalaev to either get him down or control him and hold him down. And eventually he's going to land that big shot. No one's been able to absorb that big shot. So again, you got sharp guys on both sides. When it's a coin flip fight, you're going to see sharp guys on both sides. But I just think if you can get plus money on Ankalaev, which probably going to happen come Saturday night, I think it's just too good of a bet to pass up.
Yeah, and let me say this, back to your earlier point, the strength of schedule for Poatan, there was a little run there where I believe he fought 7 UFC champions in a row, Gianni. Sean Strickland, UFC champion, is a UFC champion, Jan Blachowicz, UFC champion, Yuri Prohaska, UFC champion, Jamal, UFC champion, Yuri, UFC champion. So this fight against Khalil was his first non-champ since 2022, so this guy's been battle tested in the little time he's been in the UFC and hence won 2 belts as a result. And it's been pretty impressive to watch his run. Now, as far as Ankalaev is concerned, because I'm very, very experienced with Ankalaev, I got a question, not just for you, but for the fans. There's something I want to know. Does Magomed Ankalaev choke in big fights? Let me explain what I mean.
Wow.
So what are the 2 biggest fights of any fighter's career? Your UFC debut and your title shot. And man, the kind of sour taste he left in my mouth in both those fights. And normally I'm not one to really criticize to that extent, but I will be that harsh because I do think Ankalaev is that talented. I do think he is that skilled. And people talking about how, is he going to wrestle or not? Guys, he can strike with Pereira too. I'm not saying he's not going to get knocked out if he does, but I'm just saying he's got a chance to strike too. And you mentioned how the output might not be on the same, it's not as high up there as Pereira, but look at the defense. Look how little he absorbs. This guy is very technically sound. I just question if he chokes in big fights. And the reason I say that is look at his debut, right? You have a completely outmatched opponent in Paul Craig. And we'll talk about the finish, but even leading into the finish, he got blast doubled by Paul Craig. I was like, damn, I didn't see the dominance I wanted to see. And of course, you don't want to hold, a UFC debut against them. But the reason I'm bringing it up, we'll get there. So there's 1 second left in the fight. Now, I get it. If it's an arm bar, your arm's about to break, a heel hook, your ACL is about to get torn. Okay, tap with 1 second left. But to a choke, you couldn't hang on for 1 more second to go ahead and win that UFC debut. So that was the first sign where it was this guy's obviously very good, but is there a fight IQ question? Is there a decision making? Does he kind of have lapses in concentration? And then, listen, man, after that, he went on this big streak. And I thought, hey, all that stuff from the Paul Craig fight, it was a debut stunt. That's behind us now. I'm going to go out there and max bet Ankalaev in his first title shot against Jan Blachowicz, right? The blueprint's been laid out for years on how to beat Jan Blachowicz. You put this guy on his back. He's like a turtle. It's like Life Alert. Help, I've fallen and can't get up. And like, what the blueprint is here. And Magomed Ankalaev watched himself get his leg chopped off for 3 straight rounds. And we're all looking at each other like, what the hell is going on here? And thank God he remembered, hey, shooting takedowns is an option. And by the 4th round, he finally started getting the proper game plan going. And thank God we got a 10-8 in there and we got to salvage a draw. But my God, for a max bet. And again, it's not the fact that Jan Blachowicz had moments. Jan Blachowicz is a former champion. Jan Blachowicz is one of the best to ever do it, man. But like, it was just very, very alarming. The fight IQ, the lack of urgency. And people are going to, when you hear a lot of other people break down this fight, they're going to be like, well, it all comes down to if Magomed's going to try to take him down or not. I think that's fake news personally. I think, like I said earlier, I think Magomed is well-rounded. He can win on the feet. He can win on the ground. It's just more so the urgency to me that I need to see. And then back to my big question. Does this man choke in big fights? The debut, the first title shot, like those performances were so uncharacteristic compared to his other ones. And then he gets to fight Rakic, right? And this is not just Rakic. This is Rakic coming off a major knee injury, followed by getting knocked the you-know-what out by Yuri. Hey, Magomed, all you got to do is beat this kid. Go feast on the carcass and you get your title shot. And it was the most Magomed Ankalaev fight ever. Like, I thought he clearly won. People were saying 29-28. I had it 30-27 for Ankalaev. But the fact that, like, Rakic is on Instagram the next day talking about, hey, man, I went toe-to-toe with the #1 guy on planet Earth. Like, bro, like, I wanted to see Ankalaev whoop on Rakic and really solidify that title shot. But all that being said, he still made it to the title shot. Hopefully 3rd time is the charm in these big fights for Ankalaev, because if there's any kind of hesitancy, if there's any kind of showing Poatan too much respect, you give Poatan an inch and he will 100% take a mile. But
bro, that's a good point. Not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but the first time I heard this argument with Ankalaev under the big lights, just not getting it done, and you see that with a lot of athletes where they're amazing in the gym in all sports and on paper, like they're dominant, but for some reason it's a game 7 or it's a world championship and they just don't show up like you expect under that kind of pressure. And rest assured, come Saturday night at T-Mobile Arena with all the fans, I think it's going to be more heavy towards the Pereira side for sure. The pressure is definitely going to be on. And you're right. It's hard to argue that during his biggest moments, he hasn't gotten it done the way you'd expect.
Yeah, and that's what's concerning, more so because, look, you know how hard it is to make it to a title fight, let alone win fights in the UFC. So that's not what I'm criticizing here. It's just, I'm worried about that big moment. But the reason why I'm so harsh on Ankalaev is because, like I said earlier, I do think he is that talented. I do think he is that well-rounded. I do think that he can be a UFC world champion. Like, you don't just get to a 20-1 record if you're some bum, So, yeah, I mean, I think he's got the tools to get it done. Will he? I don't know. And then my history with Pereira, let's call a spade, has been I think I'm 4-6 on his fights. Okay, so you know what I'm saying, man? Like, I can't have confidence in Pereira because like, back to the anomaly talk, right? When I pride myself on really, taking guys that have proven themselves, that have done all these things. And Pereira has proven himself up until this point. But the fact that he came into the UFC with such limited MMA experience and got to where he's at so quick, he fought 7 champions in a row. Like, he's just truly an anomaly that I've never seen before in all my years watching this sport. And at some point, I got to admit that my strength is not picking Pereira fights. So
me neither. He's cost me money, Dan, and I faded him. Like, I haven't made money betting him, and it sucks when you look at it because he's giving you such opportunities. Like I said, he hasn't been giving crazy betting lines where, you know what I mean? He's just such a chalky favorite. You can't get down on him. There's not much value to be had. That hasn't been the case. But it just, for whatever reason, I just found spots to bet against him, and it hasn't worked out well for me. And I'm not on the fence. I'll tell you who I'm going to be on, and I'm on Ankalaev. And that worries me because of my history with Pereira bets. Hasn't gone my way either.
Yeah, so it's a tough one for me. But again, like, I do think Ankalaev has all the tools. Maybe a third time truly is the charm. And again, like people saying, it comes down to if he's going to shoot or not. And people saying that he doesn't shoot. Actually, the stats show that that's fake news. He actually does attempt takedowns, but that's not what this fight comes down to for me. Like I said, I think he can stand with Pereira. I also think he could get knocked the you-know-what out by Pereira, but like that's the risk anyone runs when they stand and bang with this man. But I'm going to actually go on your side reluctantly because of my history with Ankalaev, but I still think he's that good. But hopefully he puts it together in the big fight. Don't choke for the millionth time, please, when the lights are the brightest, man. Like, he has crushed the grapes. It's time to drink the wine, but I was saying that like 3 years ago. So hopefully he gets it done. But again, I say that. Who am I a bigger fan of? Like, whose style do I enjoy watching more? Ferreira, of course. I mean, do you like knockouts or do you like boring decisions? But none of that matters here. Obviously, just comes down to fight night, and I can honestly say I have no idea how this fight's going to play out, but I'll lean with Magomed because I think he has more ways to win. And listen, I think he can get it done, but if he pulls another Magomed, which he's known for, I'm not going to be surprised. Are you going to be surprised?
No, not at all. If Pereira lands the big shot, well, you going to be shocked? No. That's what he does.
Not at all. And chops his leg down possibly. Then again, I will say this. I know Pereira has super hard calf kicks, of course. I think Jan Blachowicz, it's a little different. I know people were kind of like thinking that Joe Rogan repeats himself when he says that Jan Blachowicz goes shin to shin. But, dude, that cannot be overlooked. Like, kicking someone shin to chin, that's like, I mean, do you remember Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman, when that got checked?
Yeah. I was there for that, actually.
Oh man, I was at their first fight.
I was at that one, the second one, and I had Weidman. I was nice. I was the only person in the stands that wasn't happy when he broke his leg.
Yeah, man. And I was at the first one when he got knocked out, and the whole place went silent, dude. But yeah, we'll both go Ankalaev. You're more confident than me. If I get some nice dog odds, then I might consider it. But otherwise, with my history, I need to identify my strengths and weaknesses. And betting on Poatan fights is not one of them. So, yeah, for as of right now on Wednesday, it's a pass for me. But I wish you the best of luck, my friend. I hope you go out there and cash a big bet.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Justin Gaethje. He's 25-5, taking on Rafael Fiziev, who's 12-3. Currently, they got it. Fiziev minus 170. The comeback on Gaethje's plus 145. Obviously, there's a rematch, but Gianni, all right, I know what argument you're about to use here, and I know what argument I'm about to ask you if I should use here. So, first time they fought, I bet Fiziev, right? And I bet him at a way larger price. So if I'm betting him in the -2s, then by default I should bet him at minus 170. All right, but here's my thing, man. Fiziev's coming off a major knee injury and a knee reconstruction. And when you're a fast twitch, explosive, dynamic guy like Fiziev, that's a red flag to me, because in Fiziev's prime, without injuries, because of the nature of his fighting style, how explosive it is, and just throws 100% into everything he does, plus the big movements with the head movement and all that, like that shit will drain you. That's why in his prime, he's gassing out in fights like the Bobby Green fight, like the Gaethje fight, et cetera, et cetera. Now, someone can be like, well, what do you mean? His power carried over in round 5 against RDA. Yeah, but look at the pace they were fighting at. They were fighting at a much lower pace than I expect this fight to be. And then also what the Bobby Green fight was, what the original Gaethje fight was. So Fiziev's going to need to be able to go 3 rounds hard, and he's coming off a big-time knee surgery. And we've seen these injuries are no joke. You remember what Jamal Hill looked like with 2 knee braces on against Yuri? 2 knee braces. And then just look, that's not discrediting Yuri. Yuri looked fantastic, but it's just more so to point out that injuries are a real thing. And if Fiziev, which, you know, his speed is such a big weapon, if that's slightly diminished, then I'm worried. Now, on the other side, everyone's big talking point is, well, Gaethje's coming off a life-changing KO. Guys, let me say something. Anyone else coming off that life-changing KO, not even thinking twice about it. Gaethje, I have a little pause because this guy's been coming off life-changing KOs his whole career and bounced back and gone on to put on more fight of the year. So if there's one guy that can bounce back from that, it's him. And if you heard his media day interview, I mean, he's just as excited to get in there as he's ever been. You know what I mean? Because normally you'd think you take a knockout like that, you're going to come back gun shy. You're worried about getting hit, all these things, right? Not Gaethje. I expect Gaethje to come in there like that fight never even happened. Now, with that being said, that still doesn't mean that he might not just get touched on the chin and go out cold. But the thing about it, man, Fiziev gasses out badly in his prime, now coming off a knee surgery. If he doesn't get Gaethje out in the first, I think there's going to be another war, man.
I agree with you. And listen, the question is, had he not gotten knocked out by Max Holloway, obviously going into that 5th round, you knew who was going to win the fight if it got to a decision. Even Holloway was ahead. He outlanded him by 78 significant strikes. So he was ahead. And I know they called it the fight of the year, but it wasn't the fight of the year until the last 10 seconds when Max drew the line and he did. Other than that knockout, it wouldn't have been a fight of the year type of fight. So it's not like he absorbed crazy amount of punishment up until that knockout, devastating knockout. With that said, had that not happened, what number would we be looking at right now? I think, if anything, it would have been close to a pick-em. And I wouldn't have been surprised if Gaethje went off as the favorite, having won the first fight. Now, I dug into that first fight, and I looked more at the data than watching the fight, because someone like you is going to watch the fight, and you're going to gain something from it. Someone like me is not going to gain much from it. I was talking to Dean Thomas today, and I said, listen, he's saying about film, like you asking me how I bet and things like that. And I said, listen, you're going to watch a fight, you're going to see things that are going to give you an advantage. I'm not. That's not what I do. So I'd be foolish to think that I'm actually going to watch a bunch of tape and absorb things that is going to give me the edge that someone like you would watch that knows what they're actually watching. So with that said, when I dug into the data from that first fight, what I found was Fiziev actually outlanded him in 2 of the 3 rounds. But more importantly, I saw that Gaethje attempted 3 takedowns, only secured 1, but that was for 5 seconds, did absolutely no damage. So we're going to be looking at another stand-up fight. Fiziev kind of wears it. That's a little problem there. And we know damage is one of the things, high criteria for the judges.
And he fades.
Yes, exactly. And that to the eye makes you think the other guy's ahead. You know what I mean? If the other guy looks fresh and this fighter looks like he's wearing it and fading, you know who's going to get the nod if in any close round. Coupled with Fiziev coming off a layoff, Fiziev coming in on short notice, it's tough to back him in this spot against someone like Gaethje. With all that said, I know for certainty that Fiziev's been asking for a fight for at least 3-4 months. Mm-hmm. So it's not like he hasn't been ready. He's been asking the UFC for a fight for a little while now. So I don't think as devastating an injury as that is, and like you said, it's one of those lingering things that a lot of athletes never really get back to 100%. I agree with you there. At least he believes he's ready to fight at that level, at the UFC level. And more importantly, I have to compare that first fight line, like you said. And what sticks out to me is not only that it opened with Fiziev minus 275, but even with Gaethje being a fan favorite and going into that fight, he had come off a loss to Oliveira. He had lost 2 of his last 3. So it wasn't like bettors were clamoring to bet Gaethje, because that didn't happen. He actually Fiziev closed at minus 250. So everybody believed, I thought more or less the market thought Fiziev was going to go in there and get the job done. That didn't happen. So now we're looking at a huge adjustment down who I saw it earlier last week, earlier in the week at minus 145. When you go from a minus 250, where your implied win probability is 71, 72%, and you're down at minus 145, where now your implied win probability is 59%. What happened in these 2 years? Because they fought in March 18th of 2023. What happened in the 2 years to make it think that he has a 12% less chance of beating Gaethje? Because we, the market, decide what the line's going to do. The odds maker puts it out. They're not trying to predict an outcome. They're trying to minimize their risk best they can. Factor in what the public's going to bet, what the sharps are going to bet. Can they get two-way action? If they don't get two-way action, can they at least sway the bettors towards taking the worst of it? That's the job of the odds maker. The fact that we, the market, didn't jump on Gaethje the first time, and now the second time around, I'm seeing the exact same thing. If not, now I'm even seeing Fiziev a little bit higher. Like, that to me sticks out. Like, I have to give that some respect, especially with all the question marks on the Fiziev side. I think the fact it's 3 rounds, that's a positive for Fiziev. Like you said, gassing, first fight in a long time since the Gamrot knockout. It's hard for me to pass up that kind of discount on implied win probability when I can't really justify it. Like, that's a huge swing for me not seeing, like, why is it warranted? The loss to Gamrot? Gamrot's a stud. And since then, what did Gaethje do? He's gone 1-1. He lost as a favorite, and then he won as an underdog. You know, he like, it's the opposite of what he does. In fact, as a dog is when you make money on Gaethje, and here he is in that spot where you get to bet him as a dog again. I think he's 6-3 as an underdog in the UFC, which tells you just how tough of a schedule he has. Like, he's fought a who's who. So it's hard to fade someone like Justin Gaethje. But I can't overlook that the one thing I've noticed most is that once the chin, like, starts to go, it goes. Like, it takes less and less of damage to finish a guy. And I think if he's going to stand there in front of Fiziev, I think he could be in trouble. I think you got a real motivated Fiziev. I think there's a Gaethje with some question marks coming off the Holloway fight. I've even heard rumors of him questioning if he's going to retire, how many fights does he have left? Like, those are the things when I start to hear, I don't have all that much confidence. Finally, again, it's hard to fade Gaethje in this spot because he is an underdog. And even if you look at recency, he's 3-3 over his last 6. That's not great, but at plus money it is. If you're getting him at plus money, you made money at 3-3. So if there weren't all these question marks on Fiziev, I would be a lot more confident because I like the Fiziev side. I'll end the suspense. I laid the minus 145 on Fiziev. Now, I hope it closes a lot higher, and I did my job. That's the most I could do. It's like, I can't go out there and fight. I can't be their coach and tell them what to do. I can't be the judges. I can't be the ref. All of that's out of my control. The only control I have as a bettor is, can I place a good bet? And good bets lose all the time, and bad bets win all the time. But the way I've learned in my almost 30 years being here in Las Vegas and having the privilege of betting for a lot of different betting syndicates and seeing how they make their money, the only thing they're focused on is placing good bets. And the best way you can judge whether you placed a good bet or not is judge it towards the closing number, because that's when you have the most information. It's like in all sports, the closing number is the best we have as the true implied win probability, because all the information's been factored in. For ball sports, we know what the weather is. We know who's injured. We know what the public's on. We know what the sharps on. We know what the weather's like. You know everything by the time the game kicks off or by the time the fight takes place. So all we can do is compare the opening line to the closing line. And if you're able to beat the closing line over and over again, you become a mathematical certainty to turn a profit. Now, if you're only going to be betting on Saturday, and you're not going to bet next Saturday and 2 Saturdays after that and next year, next month, then only thing that matters is picking the winner. And betting lines and all that is nonsense. It doesn't mean a thing. But if you're betting for profit, then that is the only thing that ultimately matters, because it's like trading in anything, in stocks, in crypto. The reason you buy crypto or you buy stock is because you believe that in the future, someone's going to be willing to pay you more for what you purchased today. Sports betting is the same way. You bet at minus 145 because you believe in the future he's going to be minus 165, minus 185. If you can do that over and over again, you're going to turn a profit. When I saw that Fiziev was at minus 145, 150, and I compared it to that first fight, and I didn't see enough in the data from that first fight. I haven't seen enough since that first fight to warrant that kind of adjustment. It made it an easy bet for me. Now, the X's and O's may not favor him. The styles may not favor him. Again, those are things that I'm not great at being able to factor in. You know what I mean? I look at the data. I try to let it tell me the picture and point me in the right direction. But as far as game planning and X's and O's, I'd rather listen to a guy like you break it down. So myself, I look at it from the market side of it. And from that perspective, I just think it's an easy bet on Fiziev, where I feel confident when I bet minus 145, 150. As long as it closes a lot higher, I feel I did my job. I can't go out there and do theirs. And a perfect example, and it's going to sound crazy because it was a great bet, but a terrible pick. Tatiana Suarez at even money and gave her out as a max bet to my subscribers at even money. On fight day, she was minus 160. Now, it looked like an awful bet if all you're doing it is judging it on the outcome. But from my perspective, betting a 50-50 proposition, which is what even money is, and she's upwards of 150, 160, where it closes, that's an increase of 10% in implied win probability. I can't make a better bet than that. That's like going down to the roulette wheel and them giving me 50 to 1 when I know there's only 38 numbers on the wheel. I'm probably not going to hit that bet one spin. I'm probably not going to hit it because there are 38 numbers. But if you're giving me 50 to 1, I have to take it because anything better than 38 to 1 is a great bet. But as we speak right now, someone just hit a number at roulette and only got paid 35 to 1. They're happy. They felt, hey, I made a good bet, right? I won. Oh, that's a terrible bet. You couldn't place the worst bet, but you happen to win it. Like good bets lose all the time, bad bets win all the time. But if you get the habit of making them over and over again, we all know how it turns out. You make good bets, long-term, you're going to turn profit. You make bad bets, long-term, you're going to lose money. So again, if you're only betting Saturday night and you're trying to pick the winner, that's how you should approach it. But if you're going to be betting over and over and over again, then what has to matter most is, are you able to beat the betting market? Because that's who your competition is. It's a zero-sum game, and we're all trading against each other at the end of the day. I did my job, I think. I believe Fiziev's going to close as a much bigger favorite. Even with the Gaethje love, it's going to come down. I don't think it's going to close below minus 145. So I think if you missed it, because right now I think it's 155. I think that's what we used on the show, the DraftKings line, 155. Again, if you bet the 155 or you take the dog now and the line drops, then you did your job, and I'm ultimately going to be wrong because if the Gaethje money comes in. But that's how I approach it. And again, when it comes to this fight, I have a fight already to compare it, but the reason I can't max bet this, I can't unload, is because I'm going against those trends. The winner of the first tends to win the second more times than not. We have a guy that hasn't fought in a long time. We have a guy on short notice. Those guys lose a lot more than they win. So there's so much against Fiziev except the betting line. So I'm forced to bet it because of the number, knowing that there's a lot of factors stacked against me, which is why it's not like a max bet for me. Otherwise, it would have been based on those things. But then again, I probably wouldn't be getting that betting line if it wasn't short notice, if he wasn't coming off a layoff and everything I touched on. So make a long story short, I bet the Fiziev side. I can't fault anyone for taking Gaethje as an underdog. You've made a lot of money betting Gaethje as an underdog. 9 times you cashed 6 tickets. Yeah. But I'm on the favorite on this one.
No, I get it from your perspective, because like we've talked about many times, the price, the price adjustment, that's such a huge factor. However, man, back to the X's and O's, let me handle that part.
Please.
When you're such a fast twitch, explosive athlete like Rafael Fiziev, who already in his prime was fading in every single fight that got extended, and now you're coming off a knee reconstruction surgery, we know to generate that speed and power, it's not about how fast your hands are. It's about having your feet under you. your legs under you, excuse me. And I don't know for a fact that he does. I have no idea about, man, maybe he comes out here the best physique we've ever seen in all our years watching the sport. And to your credit, you're right, he was getting ready for a fight. So although this is a short notice opportunity, this guy's been in the gym a long ass time getting ready. So it's not like, you know, this guy's coming off the couch or any stuff like that. It's just more so to me. Gaethje, he's 6-3 as an underdog, and he is a master at turning these fights into Justin Gaethje fights. And the whole, oh, now he's done, dude. I've been hearing Justin Gaethje's done since before he was even in the UFC. I remember when he was in World Series of Fighting, you know, before they were called PFL, and he was having wars every single fight with Luis Baboon and all these guys, right? And you know, we were thinking, oh, by the time he gets to the UFC, he's just going to get knocked out every fight. And he got knocked out a couple times. And then people were like, oh, he got knocked out by Eddie Alvarez. Now he's done. Oh, he got knocked out by Poirier. Now he's done. He got dropped by Charles. He got finished by Khabib. Now he's done. And he keeps winning in those spots where you think that he's done. And now people are doing the same thing. Yeah, I get that knockout was brutal. But again, if anyone can overcome it, it's Justin Gaethje. He is as mentally, his mental fortitude is right up there with, I don't want to say anyone. I think it's like literally best of the best in terms of this guy is like, if you think that because he got face planted against Holloway that all of a sudden he's not going to come out here and put it on the line and that he's going to be gun shy, I promise you that's fake news. Yeah, he might get knocked out by Fiziev, of course. That's how Gaethje fights, kill or be killed. But again, if you think that this knockout against Holloway is going to, you know, prevent him from really going for it, you're in for a big time surprise. Listen, any of them could hit the deck here, but I think the longer the fight goes, the more it favors Gaethje. Not to mention, guess who Gaethje's landed his only UFC takedown on? Because you know that Gaethje is a former D1 wrestler, and everyone talks about, well, he loves to brawl. He never uses his wrestling. They talk about Ankalaev never uses his wrestling. No, Gaethje never uses his wrestling. And guess who's the one guy Gaethje took down in the UFC? Mr. Rafael Fiziev. I don't know. I've been going back and forth on this one, but for this one, I'm going to go opposite as you. I'm going to take Gaethje. May the best man win.
Can't blame you. Can't blame you.
Now, featured bout in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Jalin Turner, he's 14-8, taking on Ignacio Bahamondes, who's 16-5. Currently, they got it. Ignacio minus 120. The comeback on Jalin is plus 100. So it's interesting that neither guy has a height advantage. They're both so used to being the guy that's 6'3", and they're facing these opponents that got to close the distance. And man, I like both these guys because Jalin Turner, he's come a long way, man. I don't know if you remember what some of his regional fights looked like, but this guy was a liability. This guy was getting knocked dead in multiple fights. And also, I noticed on his Contender Series fight against Max Mustaki, like dating back all the way back then, that he eats a lot of unnecessary shots. Now, you can say the same thing about his opponent, Ignacio. Now, I heard people saying that Ignacio has a worse chin than Jalin. Now, let's talk about that for a second because Jalin has 4 knockout losses. Ignacio has 0 knockout losses. Now, I understand Ignacio gets hit and rocked in a lot of fights. That's more to me of a striking defense issue than a chin issue. This guy's never been put out cold. This guy just has that tall man's defense, whereas Jalen's been put out viciously out cold. And I'm not just talking about against a stud like Vicente Luque in your debut. We can, even though that was one of the most devastating knockouts I've ever seen in all my years watching the sport, this stuff has been going on before this man was in the UFC. Now, my thing with Jalin, I think he cuts a shit ton of weight, man. Like they're both huge, but this guy is like even bigger for 55s. And that first round he has in every fight, man, he's just so dynamic, so clean. The way he strings his punches to his kicks, to his knees, he's added a little bit of grappling to the mix too. And I like a lot of what I've seen from Jalin. And with Ignacio, I've always been an Ignacio guy, and he's one of these guys. He's actually burnt me a couple times. He's come through for me a bunch of times too, but like he's a guy I haven't turned my back on. despite being burnt by him a couple times, because I really do recognize the talent, the skill, the potential. And I think that with him, it was a situation where I think he came into the UFC at like what, 22, 23. He was just a kid. You know, he had to mature. Now the guy's a father. The guy's training with Belal Muhammad. Now he's been training with Belal this whole time. But I think that having a world champion at your disposal just kind of elevates the whole room. Whereas I've heard rumors about Jalin's training situation. I heard now it's a lot better. He moved to Florida. He got out of Cali. But more importantly than any of that kind of stuff, I think that Jalin has a great chance early to come out here, hurt Ignacio like Ignacio's been hurt in many, many fights. The thing about it is something happens in these fights as they get extended, as they start to get a bit tougher, as you start to fight back against someone like Jalin. And one thing I can promise you, Gianni, if Ignacio Bahamondes is still conscious, he is 100% going to fight back. And that's when he really eases into the fight as it progresses. Start to chop him down with some calf kicks, start to mix it up to the body, start to, I don't know if he's going to feel comfortable letting his spins go or whatnot, but I think that if he can just mitigate the risk as much as possible, mitigate the damage early on, I think he can take over these later rounds. And for that reason, I'm going to actually come out here and pick Ignacio Bahamondes to get the biggest win of his career and enter the rankings early next week.
I can't disagree. Here's the bottom line. Usually I would stay away from a fighter like Bahamondes, and I would look to fade him, actually look to get a good number to fade him. And here's why. Because he's coming off back-to-back first-round knockouts, back-to-back performance bonuses, and you're almost never going to get a good price on a guy that's doing that. But the narrative is this is a step up in competition, that Jalin Turner is much more tested, has fought the much tougher guys. That may be true, but he hasn't beaten the tougher guys. Because when you look at strength of schedule, it's the losses that are more impressive. It's not the wins. Because when you look at the opponents that they've beaten, the win percentage is about 1% different. Like Bahamondes is UFC wins come against opponents at 158% of their fights. And I think Turner's have won 59% of their fights. So it's the losses that have been more impressive. And when I see that, I look to fade that type of guy. And the more I dug into this and saw, like you said, Turner's not going to have a reach advantage like he's usually comfortable with. In fact, the last two times that someone had a 75-inch reach that only a 2-inch reach disadvantage, which has no statistical significance, he lost both of those. It was against Hooker and it was against Luque. Now, again, Bahamondes is also accustomed to having that reach advantage, but I tend to think Turner depends on it a little bit more. More importantly, I think that Bahamondes, at least that's what the data tells me, mixes it up a little bit better. He uses a lot more kicks in his striking, and I just think he's more versatile. It seems like this is a step up in competition for him, but I think it's a fight that's very winnable. Like, I don't think they're throwing him the toughest step up in competition. I think even, again, looking at the data as far as the X's and O's, I think he's going to get exactly the kind of fight he wants to get out of Jalin Turner. And it's going to come out down to perseverance. And I got to lean to the Bahamondes side. He's shown that scrappiness, that toughness. Like you said, he's been rocked, but has he been finished? And everybody gets rocked. When you're fighting at that level, you're going to get hit. Someone's going to hit you flush. Like, it's just impossible not for that to happen. But it's, how do you respond? Are you able to recover? And what happens after that? And everything is a positive on the Bahamondes side. The only negative, like I said, is he's coming in off of those back-to-back first-round knockouts, performance bonuses. And if you start to believe your own hype, and all of a sudden the guy's still standing there in the second and third round, do you question, what am I doing wrong? Why didn't he fall with that shot when I knocked out the last two guys easily with it? That's one of the question marks. I bet Bahamondes, no secret there. I liked him. The line moved in my direction, but it's come back since.
Let me say this.
I'm not really surprised. I'm not surprised because it's going to get good two-way action. It just seems like that kind of fight. But I like Bahamondes. That's who I'm on.
Let me say this. I know exactly what you're saying. You know, you hit these guys with your best shot. They're still there, second, third round. That's when, you know, your heart, your will can start to diminish. But Jalen's the one that suffered from that multiple times, whereas there's never been a heart issue
with Bahamondes, right?
with Bahamondes ever. And not to mention, like I said, when you're in the room with guys like Leal, who's currently the champ, it's their mindset. You know, it's funny because when I competed in jiu-jitsu, I actually hit up Leal and asked him for some advice because, you know, who's a better mastermind at winning than Leal, right? And one of the things he told me was to not focus on the outcome or the fight itself or the match itself, but to take it minute by minute, just win each minute. And then it all adds up. So to me, it's like,
dude, he's lived by that. He's actually,
I know
he's practiced what he preaches. Like a lot of people give advice, but I know a lot of people that don't practice their own advice. He's actually done what he says.
So
the advice he gives, I love that.
Right. So if he gives me that kind of advice before a grappling tournament, what kind of advice do you think he gives to a guy that he sees every single day in the practice room who has never had a heart issue, who's only had I get hit too much issue, right? So I think that Jalen's the one that needs to come out here and get this early finish. I don't know, because look, both guys are like 6'3", they're huge, but I think those weight cuts take more out of Jalin than
that's what it seems like. That's what it seems like
out of Ignacio. Hence, you know, later on in his fights, how they tend to go. And you're talking about Ignacio, maybe he's a little cocky because he's coming off the two bonuses, but I don't buy it with him. This is not like it's his first knockout in the UFC. He's never had that kind of thing. Again, back to the Leal talk. When you get back in the gym on Monday, you think Leal's going to be letting you party, or do you think he's going to be telling you, hey, congrats on the knockout, now let's get back to work? Because if you want to do that against the guys in the top 15, then you can't be going around celebrating because you knocked out Christos Giagos. Because Jalin Turner, if you think that this is a joke, Jalin Turner can literally launch you into the 5th row. So he is going to be locked in as far as I'm concerned. I'm not concerned about him fading late or anything like that. I'd be more concerned about Jalin fading late. One more thing regarding Jalin. So the big talking point regarding the Bobby Green fight and then the Moicano fight, how he allegedly felt bad for killing Bobby Green, or sorry, for badly damaging Bobby Green, and then did a little walk-off stunt against Moicano. That to me is a lack of fight IQ. Reason being this. Firstly, Jalin, it's not your fault that the ref didn't stop the fight against Bobby. That's the ref's fault. So although you show that you're a good human being and that you care about your fellow man, it's still kill or be killed when you get in there. And that what happened against Moicano wasn't about, oh, he felt bad for Bobby. That was about Jalin has a massive hole on the ground. That's what that was about. Now, he said he spent the last 11 months tightening up his grappling and whatnot. I mean, maybe that's true. Maybe that isn't true. But bottom line, I think these two are going to stand and bang either until one man falls or until it's a 3-round war. Again, I've been repeating myself. Give me Ignacio to take over late and win this fight and earn that ranking.
I like it.
Now, next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Amanda Lemos. She's 14-4-1, taking on Iasmin Lucindo, who's 17-5. Currently, they got it Lucindo -140. The comeback on Lemos +120. I mean, my man, 15-year age gap. Like, oh my God. And like Lemos, she stood out because when you have that one-hitter quitter in women's MMA, just by default, that's something that you have to take note of, especially at 115 pounds. I mean, when's the last time you saw girls at 115 pounds getting knockdowns? You know, besides like, you know, my girl Yan Zhaonan, shout out to her, and Zhang Wei Li. But besides like, you know, them, who else is doing stuff like that, right? And then Lucindo, I've liked the progression, and I like the fact that although she's very young, she has a lot of experience under her belt. How do you kind of see this one going down?
Here's what stuck out to me. Number one, the age difference. You're absolutely right. And I mean, you could buck a trend like that, but you got to be very selective, because, you know, if you did nothing else but just bet an opponent that has a 14 or 15-year age advantage, you're going to catch exactly 65 out of every 100 tickets you bet. And as long as you're not laying more than, 165, 170 on average, you're going to turn a profit. That's the bottom line. Now, with Lemos, obviously it seems like potential credentials versus potential. You got the credentials on the Lemos side. She's got the more UFC experience. She's got the tougher strength of schedule. She's got the finishes, like you said. When you have a finish rate of, 67%, so 8 of her 12 fights have finished in a weight class where it's about 32% over the last 10 years. And last year, it was only 21% of fights finished inside the distance. So 8 out of 10 times, the judges got involved. And she's got that power. But I think this is the right time for Lucindo. Like, when at that age, what I've noticed is the improvement from fight to fight. Like, and the data always reflects that more times than not. If they're elite, if they're going to be elite or they're going to be top 10 fighters, then what you notice from that age up until 25 is the leaps in their data jumps off the charts. Like, from one fight to another, they could look like a completely different fighter. The improvement, the trajectory of improvement is huge compared to a fighter that's 30 to 32. Like, more times than not, they're already seasoned. They know what they're going to do. It's just the over and over and over and over doing the same things more or less. That's not in a negative, but it's not constantly looking to add tools, constantly looking to improve. It's more to maintain than anything else. With Lucindo, I think we're going to see nothing but improvements. Now, what worries me a little bit on that side is seeing the betting line on the total. The over is still heavily favored, but I've seen sharp money come in on the under. And knowing Lucindo isn't the finisher, one of her 5 UFC fights finished inside the distance compared to Lemos being the finisher, I got to ask myself, is there any correlation there? Now, because it's still heavily chalked to the over, it doesn't worry me as much, but I would have preferred to see it the other way, to see that number go up, that a decision is expected more than anything else. I would feel more comfortable with the Lucindo side. But the other thing that sticks out with Lemos is this. I like to call it the hammer and a nail. Like, when she's expected to win, she gets the job done. 6 times she closed as the betting line favorite. 6 times she's cashed the ticket for you. But in the underdog role, she hasn't got it done. Now, the argument may be like, oh, but who was she a dog to? Look at the level of competition she was a dog to. Those fighters are 29-15. They won 66% of their fights. Lucindo hasn't met anyone like that yet. Well, you could only fight who's in front of you. You can't fight someone that you haven't fought yet. That's not her fault. And all she's done is gotten the job done. There's no reason for me to jump off Lucindo now. I bet her before she's gotten it done for me. And the age difference is just too much for me to overcome. Like, if Lucindo was up around that 180 range, close to 2-1 favorite, I wouldn't be as get involved. I'd lean that way, but I don't think I'd fire. But when she was around 115, 125, 130, 135, I think easily she wins this fight 6 out of 10 times. I really do. And I think we still haven't seen the best out of her, where I think we've already seen the best out of Lemos. So for me, it's Lucindo. I'm not sure and here I am, chalk. And I usually look to bet dogs, but it's just one of those cards where the chalk has just jumped out at me, and I'm not going to be afraid to bet it. I can't control who they said is the favorite. It's just who I like. And I like Lucindo on this one. I think she makes it 5 straight wins.
Yeah, listen, man, you just have to pick what you think is going to happen. Like, people, there's some cards where I take a lot of dogs. There's some cards where I don't. And the cards where I don't, someone will be like, you picked all the favorites. And I'm like, well, am I supposed to lie to you and
exactly
and take someone that I didn't take? What do you want from me? I'm just telling you my thoughts on the fights. Do whatever you want with them. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what I think. That's it. Now listen, Lemos, we know that she has something special for the division. One hitter quitter. You don't often see girls in the strawweight division, let alone in women's MMA, going out there and dropping people. She's also got a nasty guillotine. She's explosive, fast twitch, but I have a lot of issues with the takedown defense and the get-up game. And Iasmin has a little sneaky body lock takedown that I expect her to fully go to in this fight. Now, granted, is Lemos someone that she looked up to, she's a more established Brazilian fighter that has fought for a title before, and these young fighters look up to people like that. And are you fighting a hero of yours? But bottom line, I think that this girl Lucindo is experienced enough. Put that stuff on the back burner, and as long as she's not badly compromised, let's say this. Let's say Lemos does have a big first round, maybe even gets a knockdown. Like, Lemos is another one of these fighters that gasses, man. She's a gasser, man. That fast twitch style. You're going 100 miles per hour. It's only logical that the fuel tank is going to diminish. That's just how it works in the octagon with your car, like whatever the case may be, man. So I'm also go Lucindo here.
Before we go to the next fight, you being the X's and O's guy, what jumped out at me as Lemos gets controlled for a lot of the minutes she's grappling. Like at 37% of the minutes she's being controlled, and 62% takedown defense, 26 takedown attempts. That's not great. Is it because she's comfortable on her back? Is she okay? That's where she wants to be. Is that because of her submission game, or is that just because has a difficult time getting back up? Because I even see Lucindo having an advantage there. She averages almost 2 takedowns per 5 minutes. And is that the case where Lemos is that's where she wants to be, or that's just where they take her?
Well, that's where they take her, and she can't get up from bottom. That's a big weakness in her game. Not just when she came into the UFC, she fought 2 weight classes up, and she got finished by Leslie Smith, and it got exposed back then, right? But when you drop 2 weight classes, let alone women's MMA, automatically you're gonna be, assuming you got the skills that she does, right? Which she's made it to a title fight. She was able to rise up the rankings, but certain things in your game are still going to be holes in your game no matter how much weight you lose. And like you said, this is not a situation like Damian Maia where they pull guard and now you
want to be there.
Now you're in their world. Now you're in their world. No, I think that Lucindo gets that body lock, and I think that Lemos is gonna have a hard time getting back up. So yeah, that's my take on that. Now, kicking off the main card, I'm pumped about this, Gianni. In the lightweight division, we got Bobby King Green, the legend. He's 32, 16-1, taking on Mauricio Ruffy, who's 11-1. Currently, they got it. Mauricio Ruffy minus 450. The comeback on Bobby Green is plus 350. I'm a fan of this Ruffy guy. People saying that he got exposed his last fight, as far as I'm concerned, are full of shit. But I don't know everything, so maybe y'all are right. But the way I viewed that fight was, firstly, Ruffy landed 5 different knockout blows in that fight that would have literally knocked out anyone else. But that kid, Lontop, listen to this shit, bro. So it was supposed to be at 155 pounds, right? Lontop, he takes it on short notice. You know what? We'll give you the benefit of the doubt, kid. Let's do a catch weight up at 165. No big deal. You save the card. All good. And then this dude Lontop comes out and misses weight for the catch weight, Gianni. So right away, not having to cut that extra weight when he's eating the bombs he was eating against Ruffy, that's why he didn't go unconscious. But man, some of those shots, when Ruffy landed that look away left hand, if Lontop is right there, Ruffy lands the left hook and is looking here, and he floors him. And man, I feel like Lontop missing weight cost Mauricio Ruffy one of the all-time highlights he could have ever got. Because if that look away left hook ended up being a knockout, bro, I'm telling you, that shit will be on highlight reels for years to come. And there were so many other moments in that fight where he hit him with stuff where it's damn, if this kid had made 55, he'd be out cold. And we talk about with the fighting nerds how the 4 main guys of the fighting nerds, they've all kind of tailored their styles around legendary fighters. With Mauricio Ruffy, he kind of has a little bit of that Conor McGregor flowy style with the pull counters. Caio Borralho is kind of a Lyoto Machida / Damian Maia hybrid. That Carlos Prates modeled his style after the great Anderson Silva, and Gene Silva is like the Vanderlei Silva of the fighting nerds. So all these guys have modeled their styles after legends of the sport. And what I think is going to happen here is if you pull up Bobby Green versus Patty, man, Patty, I'm higher on Patty than others. I don't know, it's the hair.
Me too.
Or
Me
whatever
too.
the case is, but people love to hate on him. Okay, I look forward. People are talking about how Chandler is going to be their biggest bet ever. 40-year-old Chandler, like, dude, I'm licking my chops at Patty in that spot because people are going to get on their high horse, be arrogant about how, Chandler's 2-5 in the UFC. Now he's going to get the win. It's like, dude, it's been over. It's not been over in terms of entertaining fights, but in terms of winning fights at this level, I think Patty's catching Mike at a great time, but we'll get into that later. And I can say what I really have to say when the time comes. But the reason I brought up Patty is because Patty was landing some pull counters on Bobby, but Patty doesn't have that same firepower or fast twitch as Mauricio Ruffy. And if you want to talk about a guy who can, pull off moves from video games, who can fight like a Mortal Kombat character, I'm telling you, as this kid Mauricio Ruffy starts to feel more comfortable in the octagon, you're going to see some spectacular stuff from him. And he's got the size at lightweight mixed in with that very, very unique style. He tries things that other guys don't try. I like Mauricio Ruffy. I'm sold on this guy. I don't care what other people are saying. I care what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is Mauricio Ruffy is going to come out here and knock out Bobby Green in the first round with a pull right.
I can't disagree with you. Listen, the betting line tells you a lot, not in this fight, but just the potential of Ruffy, like you said. 2-0 in the UFC with an average closing line of -615. The guy's now won 6 straight fights. So what's expected from him is a lot. And Bobby Green has the experience. There's no question there. But when you add in 10 years older, huge disadvantage. 4-inch reach advantage also against Bobby Green. Keeping his hands down against someone as dangerous.
Real quick, Gianni. I'm glad you brought that up. I just want to touch on that because I don't want to forget that point, because you brought up a fantastic point. When you're a guy like Bobby Green who relies on your reflexes and you fight with your hands down, the great Roy Jones, the great Anderson Silva,
yes,
et cetera. Dude, when the speed goes when the reflexes go, those guys have the most unfortunate endings to their careers, man. It's not like my boy Dan Henderson, who, is slow as molasses. He's like the old snapping turtle. But the thing about it is, what was his big attribute? The H-bomb, and power is the last thing to go. So
yeah. So
my boy Hendo could be slow as hell. And in his last fight, when he was like fucking 44 in the title fight with Bisping, he was still dropping Bisping. So, but you look at Bobby Green when the style relies on the reflexes, and now he is getting older. That things, they don't get better, Gianni. They get worse. Keep going.
Yeah, and that's what sticks out to me the most. Like, he depends on that slickness, that being able to evade the big shot without even needing to keep his hands up. He could only do that for so long, and now he's 38 years old, less than 2 years shy of 40. Like, as athletic as he is, you're just not that 25-year-old version of yourself. You're not even that 35-year-old version of yourself anymore. And I'm surprised that the betting line's dropping. I think that has to do with the name. You know what I mean? Bobby Green, King Green, call him what you will. That with the level of competition he's faced, the level of competition he's lost to, this appearing like a step up. But I think, if anything, you're getting a discount. Like, the best thing that happened was that he didn't just run through Lontop in his last fight. Had he just run through him, you'd be looking at a -800 betting line right now. You're getting it discounted because that didn't happen. So just let them keep betting Green down. Hopefully they do. And then I'll be able to straight back. I have no problems. I'll lay -500 all day if I think the true line should be -800. I have no problems at all doing that. Another fight where, for me, it's a favorite or pass situation. And I think there's all the reasons are there. Could Bobby Green pull off a win? Sure. at that level. He's not there by accident. But I just think this is Mauricio Hoopy's time to shine. And like you touched on the fighting nerds, you know how you've seen throughout the years, it's been like this gym's hot, this gym's hot, this gym's hot. It's a hot gym right now. Like City Kickboxing was hot. I remember decade ago when it was Jackson Wink was hot. Like there's certain gyms that are just hot. And right now, the fighting nerds are hot. And I'd be very selective fading them because you just, again, you're in the gym, so you know better than anyone else. It's like, you know, iron against iron. That's what toughens iron, right? That's what you need. You want that. And you have that kind of positivity in the gym. Like it's all systems go. So yeah, it's a favorite. We have no need to go long on a guy that's a greater than 4-1 favorite, but it's a favorite or pass situation. It's not a dog that I'm interested in betting at all. I'm looking for the best price to fade him right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I just want to say, you know, I hope people don't feel like we're shitting on Bobby Green.
No, God, no.
You know, I'm a big fan of his. I remember back in the day when he cashed a plus 250 for me against Josh Thompson. And then fast forward like 10, 15 years, he cashes a plus 350 for me against Grant Dawson. So I'll always have a soft spot for Bobby King Green, man. Always will. And much respect to him. But yeah, I'm going Hoofy. Pull right counter, knockout. Now, before we continue, I got to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Bet105. Hey guys, just want to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Bet105, an emerging crypto-only sports book. They play the game the right way. They got fast and easy payouts and some of the best odds in the industry. Now, one thing I really like about them is they're offering split decision insurance. So for all y'all that were on the wrong side of that Esteban Ribovics versus Nasrat fight, or even the Rob Font versus Gene Matsumoto fight, or how about William Gomez versus Hyder Amel? Now I want to say, if you took the dogs in those spots, you made very, very sharp bets. However, for those that didn't take the dog, as of right now, you didn't get anything back. You just lost your money. But with split decision insurance offered by Bet105, you get 25% of your money back. So should give you a little bit of comfort going into these precarious split decisions, depending who's at the judge's table. Is it Chris Lee? Is it Adelaide Bird? It's so unpredictable. So at least you know, if you get to that split decision, if you win, you get your money. But if you lose, hey, I'll take 25% of my money back. Now, another thing they're offering is the parlay boost. If you're a parlay player and you want to get 15% better odds on your parlay for every 3-leg parlay or more, definitely check out the odds booster. I mean, screw it. Go get yourself 15% better odds on those parlays. So the way to check them out is you click the link in the description below. That way you help out half the battle when you check out Bet105. So once again, guys, click the link in the description to support half the battle. Thank you very much, Bet105, for sponsoring today's episode of Half the Battle, and a huge shout out to the fans. Let's continue the show. My friend, next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Curtis Blaydes, he's 18-5, taking on Rizvan Kuniev, who's 13-2-1. Yeah, let's say 14-2, because he definitely beat up Renan Ferreira despite no
contest.
What was in his system that day. Now, currently they got it Blaydes minus 355. The comeback on Kuniev is plus 290. Gianni, I need you to talk to me because I've never been a Blaydes guy, but I can also respect the fact that if you're not a top 5 guy, you're probably not beating him. However, Kuniev, listen, in that Renan Ferreira fight, firstly, did you see what he tested positive for?
No.
Okay. Hold on. Let me pull this up.
Please do.
Okay. So
I just heard he failed the test, so I just assumed.
Oh, he didn't just he didn't just fail the test, my friend. He tested he tested positive for drostanolone, and then a bunch of other knowns that I can't pronounce the names. Like it was like literally everything in the book he tested positive for in that Ferreira fight, and like he was in the best shape of his life. So then he comes to Contender Series, right? And like dude's like fat beyond belief. You're like, oh my God, but he still handled business. And I think that he's actually a pretty skilled guy. Like he was a Habib's heavyweight champion in the Eagle FC. And there's certain things I like about the guy, man. For a heavyweight, he'll occasionally throw some spins on, decent takedown defense, takedown offense. He's got some hands. Like, the only kind of concern is that he can be backed up into the fence, and sometimes it's hard for him to disengage. And against someone like Curtis Blaydes, that could be a concern. But then again, Curtis Blaydes hasn't landed a takedown in his last 5 fights, spanning close to half a decade. So there's that to consider. But man, the difference in level and competition is night and day. But I've never been a Blaydes guy. So if you can convince me on this underdog, I might be intrigued. It's just that despite my personal feelings for Blaydes, my personal feelings about Blaydes, excuse me, I still respect the fact that you have to be on a certain level to beat this guy. Is Kuniev on that level?
Yeah, and this is the kind of fight you expect Blaydes to win. You nailed it. Like when he fights the top guy, top contender, top 1-2 guy, for whatever reason, he just don't get it done, even though it seems he's got all the tools. But you get below the top 5, and I don't want to call him a gatekeeper, but he gets it done. He gets the job done. At heavyweight, like, I have to have conviction to lay chalk on heavyweights, just because there's just so much randomness involved with once you land those big shots. And when you look at Kuniev, he's got that power, obviously. The one worry I have is looking at his record and seeing that he was an amateur for a long time. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, like, if you look at his last 5 or 6 amateur fights, he was fighting against guys that was their first fight. So I don't know whether it was a confidence thing like they do with boxers. I know I talked to a couple managers out here, and they said that's just what we do to build their confidence. Like, because I was always like, how can you not improve the sport by putting them in like the UFC does against tougher opposition sooner? And he's like, well, boxing, that's just how it's been programmed since the beginning of time. That number one, to get a title shot, you need to have more or less an undefeated record and at least 20 plus fights. And more importantly, they're confidence builders. You want to get your fighter confident. Like, how long, if that's the case, like, how long does it take to get this guy confident to become a pro? And then within his third fight, he loses to, a next UFC guy at least. But then the very next fight loses that again. Like, that don't give me a lot of confidence. And then he was on the Contender Series 2 times.
Well, are you talking about
the contract?
Sorry, real quick, are you talking about the losses Kuniev had early?
Yeah.
Gianni, in fairness, I think those were like 10 years ago.
Yeah, he's that much improved since then.
Well, here's the thing: when you're comparing a guy who's 2-1 to now, what's his record? Like 12-2. Okay.
Yeah.
2-1 to 13-2. It's not even the same guy.
Especially against an experienced ex-UFC fighter type of thing, right? Is what you're saying.
No, like what I'm saying is when you've had less than 5 pro fights and now you've had like 15 fights, I'm not worried about what you did when you were 2-1.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just like why were they not testing him at all? Like, even on the way up, like, again, I get it. Before the more higher promotions, it's just the way it is. I see it with the Contender Series all the time. Guys come in having, it looks like they don't have a great record, but you could only fight great opponents, but you could only fight who's in front of you. And I get it. He's been on a run of late. He has been on a run. So it's tough to, like, I don't want to bet Blaydes. I can't lay that chalk with Blaydes at all. But I'm like you. I want to convince myself to sprinkle something on the Kuniev side. And it's just, I don't have that conviction. I just, for whatever reason, I just don't. Now, he may go out there, surprise us, and get the knockout or, drag it into a decision, because we've seen him get plenty of those during this run. But I just don't have the confidence, don't have the conviction to even getting that kind of plus money. Because like you said, this is the kind of guy that Blaydes routinely beats. But how long can you do that for? Once you get a shot for the title, how many times? And then after a certain amount of times, it's like, now you're just fighting. Are you fighting for a paycheck? Are you fighting out your contract? Like, what are you really fighting for? Because you're a top 5 guy, let's say, and you're fighting an unranked guy. This is his chance to get ranked. But are you motivated? Like, are you to lay that kind of chalk on Blaydes? I need to know he's got the motivation. I don't have it. So I'm looking for reasons to bet Kuniev. Like, I'm hoping you talk me into sprinkling a little something on Kuniev in this one.
Yeah, it's just Gianni. I'd love to make the argument, but I just need to see more, you know. Like I like the performance against Renan Ferreira. I thought he fought him perfectly. And the second contender series fight, he did his thing too, but it's like this is such a big step up in competition. Like I know Blaydes is not trustworthy. I know Blaydes has pulled stunt after stunt after stunt, but Sergey Pavlovich, Francis Ngannou twice, Derek the Black Beast Lewis. Blaydes beat Volkov. Now I don't know if he beats today's Volkov, but let's not act like that Volkov was a slouch or something that he fought. Like, come on. So yeah, I still think it's dog or pass, but I'm leaning more towards pass unless I see or
Me too. That's where I'm at. I'm at a pass here.
Unless I see or hear something in the next few days that really changes my mind. Because like if you really give me the compelling argument to fade Blaydes, I will do it. But yeah, and I really wanted to do it. I just I need to see how he performs against a truly elite fighter. And until then, yeah, I don't know if I'm willing to take that trip with him. So for that reason, I'm out. Now, next up in the flyweight division, I'm really excited about this, man. We got Rei Tsuruya. He's 10-0, taking on Joshua Van, who's 12-2. Currently, they got a Van minus 190 to come back on Tsuruya plus 165. I think I have a decent read on this fight. Firstly, Tsuruya, I was very impressed with his grappling. The fact that like a kid that young is so confident in his abilities and knows exactly where his strengths lie and isn't going to fight uncharacteristic. He's going to go out there and try to get the fight in his realm. And he's got a variety of takedowns. You know, it's not just a double leg. It's not just a single leg. He's got upper body throws. He'll drop back for leg locks while standing. He'll do all kinds of unorthodox stuff. And he's got a bit of a wrestling background from, I forget do you know the actual credential? Was it like some kind of Japanese world team or something like that? Like it's something respectable.
Was it?
Yeah, it was respectable. And I've seen this kid get twisters and he's good, bro. He's good. The issue with that one-dimensional style is, firstly, it's a very taxing style. Unless you get early submissions, like if you have to keep grappling late into the fights and there's no plan B, that's why even when you look at the highest level of that style, like Damian Maia in his prime, for example, there's a reason why when he would start getting fatigued late in fights, he'd start flopping to his back, he'd start doing the whole bit. And that's what you got to be careful about when you're dealing with these guys like Tsuruya. But that being said, man, that first round, I mean, are you going to be surprised if Tsuruya takes this guy's back and chokes him out? I'm not. He's been choked out before. But the thing about it is, if Josh Van survives this first round, that's when I think the takedown attempts are going to start coming from a mile away. That's where I think that there's not really a plan B or a second option. I think he's going to start running out of ideas. And then you're stuck on the feet with Josh Van, who has put over 100 significant strikes in multiple fights. And like his hand speed is something truly serious. So a good friend of mine named Cody Durden just fought Joshua Van. And going into the fight, now that, you know, the fight's over, we can talk about what like the game plan was and stuff like that. And, you know, Cody's game plan was, he was very aware of the fact that Josh Van's sprawl when it comes to defending double leg takedowns is very serious. So Cody's plan was, we're only going to go for single legs in this fight, make him balance on one leg, take it from there, no double legs, right? Then the fight starts and like one of the first punches that lands like hit Cody so bad that broke his orbital that all of a sudden the game plan goes completely out the window. Now he's not shooting the single legs that he had initially planned to. Now he's shooting double legs, where we know Van has an incredible sprawl. And then, you know, you can't get those takedowns, you gas out. Now you're getting picked apart for 3 straight rounds against Josh Van. And shout out to my boy Cody Durden for not going down, because I know, especially with a broken orbital, because I know lesser men would have went down, and Cody took his ass whooping like a man. So all respect, Cody. But back to this fight, One difference, I think, between Cody and Tsuruya. Now, granted, on paper, I think Tsuruya, hopefully, he watched that and realizes double legs are not the move here. We need to go for single legs. We need to go for body lock takedowns. But then again, like I said, Cody had that plan too going in. But so after the fight, we talked a little bit, maybe about a week after, one of your boys fight and things like that happen. The day of, you're just gonna say, hey man, you fought your ass off. I'm proud of you, right? You're not gonna be like, why didn't you do that? You like the day after, you just tell him you're proud of them. You fought your ass off. He did fight his ass off, but after things have kind of calmed down a little bit, a week or two has passed by, we talk on the phone a little bit. And then I ask him, whatever happened to the famous single legs you were talking about? I saw you going for double legs, which you said you were not going to do. And he's like, yeah, that was the plan. And then I got hit in the face and the game plan went completely out the window. So I could see a similar thing happen to Tsuruya, where he feels like, all right, the double legs aren't going to work. Let's mix it up with other kinds of takedowns. He gets cracked super fucking hard. Game plan goes out the window. Now you're shooting from a mile out. And the difference between Cody and Tsuruya is, yeah, Cody might not have the hands Van has, but Cody has infinitely better hands than Tsuruya. So that's what kept him at least from getting knocked out. Whereas I think that if this gets past the first round, look, like I said, Tsuruya might submit this guy in the first round. He is that dangerous. He is that good, especially when he's fresh. But man, Josh Van, as the fights progress, oh my God. I think it could turn into a massacre. But I see a spectrum of how this fight could play out, right? So I see that one scenario where Tsuruya either gets those early takedowns but doesn't submit Josh Van. Now the takedowns are a bit tougher to come by, or potentially gets another takedown in round 2, but then Josh kind of, takes over the latter part of that round, and then Josh dominates round 3. Maybe it's a split decision. But the other thing I'm thinking is that after round 1, there's a chance of a massacre. So either way, close or not close, I'm going Josh Van to come out here and defeat Tsuruya and hand him his first ever defeat.
Yeah, and when you have that undefeated, you have that confidence, that unbeatable, that it's hard to quantify. Like, you can't put a price on it, but you have that type of confidence. But when you look, it's not even close as far as being tested in level of competition. I mean, when you look at who Tsuruya beat, he beat Carlos Hernandez, who was coming in off 2 out of 3 losses. He was caught him at the worst possible time. This is a short notice fight, even though Tsuruya, I think, was scheduled to fight in Australia, and then that fight didn't happen. So, I mean, I'm sure, he's been fight ready, obviously, for this one. So even though it's short notice, it's still not as short notice as if he's coming in off the couch. The problem with like you said, the one-dimensional where you know what he's going to do is, if that doesn't work, what's the plan B?
No plan B.
That's the problem. And I think, again, Joshua Van, who's already been tested, who's faced opponents who want to do exactly that to him, and has passed the test, it's hard to fade him. It's hard to not to bet against him in this spot. Again, this is it's going to be his 7th UFC fight. He's got, or 6th, 7th. He's got the experience. Now he's getting more and more experience, more and more comfortable in there. I just think it's his fight to lose. I don't know if I could get to where I'm going to lay 2-1 on him, where he's got to win this fight, 7 out of 10 times for me to feel I have a little bit of an edge, 7.5 out of 10 to feel like it's a great bet. I'm not too sure. Ken, actually, like you said, if he takes him down, if he gets top control, or if he takes his back in that first round, it could be a lot of trouble. Is he able to do that? 2.5 out of 10 times? Will that happen? Maybe. I mean, he seems pretty dominant, at least at that, but we just haven't seen him be tested enough. I don't have the confidence to bet this dog because he hasn't been tested enough, but I'm not too sure I'm getting any kind of value laying a little greater than thinking that it should be greater than 2-1 on the Van side. I mean, obviously, if he keeps this standing, as the fight progresses, he's going to have a huge advantage in the striking. At least that's what all the numbers tell me. I'm just not comfortable laying that kind of chalk yet. So for me, I think it's more like you. I think it's a favorite or pass situation. It's just not a favorite I've gotten involved in.
I understand. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a very intriguing matchup between Brunno Hulk Ferreira. He's 12-2, taking on Armen Petrosyan, who's 8-4. Currently, they got a Petrosyan -150. The comeback on Ferreira's +130. Now, Armen Petrosyan, I don't know what it is, but no matter who he's fighting, no matter what the opponent is or what the odds are, everyone will always stand on their shield that there's value on Petrosyan. But let me say this, brother. Petrosyan's got a lot of things I like about him. The volume, the output, the level of competition. I mean, this guy beat RoboCop, you know that, right? And he's also one of these guys that came from the kickboxing background, and he's really been adapting his style well to MMA. I like how he took care of Christian Leroy Duncan, and even in the Shara Bullet fight, I thought he was looking good too there.
So that spinning back fist.
Yeah, you know, it was what it was. What are the chances we see a knockout like that again, right? But here's the thing with Brunno Hulk Ferreira. Like, if you're just talking about technique, it doesn't look the prettiest. He kind of does a lot of things wrong. The in-betweens are just not there. But there's one thing that this man has, is he has that touch of death. He truly does. And it's crazy to see a guy who's like 5'8" doing his thing at middleweight. They say he's like 5'10". Yeah, okay. This guy's like 5'8". But man, he is a powerhouse. However, that being said, if he can't get the knockout, the striking differential here is night and day. He will get picked apart in this spot. That's just the bottom line. It's just about, is he gonna badly damage Petrosyan along the way or not? That's what it comes down to in my eyes. So yeah, as a pure pick, sure, I'll go Petrosyan. You know, I think he's more well-rounded. I think that the volume difference is really ultimately what should win him this fight. It's just that when you're on the feet with a guy like Brunno Ferreira, it only takes one. I mean, and even in fights he's lost, like the last one against Abus, dude, he had Abus on death's doorstep a couple times in that fight. That was a wild fight where a lot of people that I respect were very confident on Abus. And yeah, they ended up with the win, but I know it was a lot more of a sweat than they expected it to be. And again, although I'm picking Petrosyan here, yeah, this dude Brunno scares me a little bit because it's like he does everything wrong. I say he does everything wrong. Like, I'm not criticizing a 12-2 pro fighter, right? But I'm saying, like, if you showed his technique to a boxing coach, they'd laugh in your face, right? Like, but he makes it work. So yeah, it's tough. But here's the bottom line: he's gonna be getting picked apart until he either loses the fight or until he lands the kill shot. Which way do you lean? I'm going Petrosyan.
Yeah, I placed a bad bet. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Now I'm hoping to be the product of good luck because I bet Petrosyan, and I saw the line starting to climb. And I thought maybe whoever's out there firing and steaming this are seeing the same things I'm seeing. And that's if Petrosyan could get out of that first round, he should start to have the advantage. We know each round that passes, the probability of a finish diminishes by almost 50%. Each and every round. And we know when it comes to Ferreira, all of his UFC wins come in the very first round. If you look at anything that's past the second round, Petrosyan's won 3 of his 4 fights. And I think, as far as like you said, with the stand-up, at least what the data shows, he should be able to outland them, pick them apart. Not as long as he could avoid that early knockout, he should be fine. Coupled with he's coming off back-to-back losses, I thought that recency bias is giving me an undervalued fighter on top of it against a fighter that's a little bit overvalued, I thought, in Ferreira, especially when you look at the strength of schedule. Like, it's not even close to level of competition. You look at Petrosyan's opponents won 79% of their fights compared to 55 overall for who Ferreira's faced. Like, that's a big contrast. Now, granted, Petrosyan's opponents haven't had a huge sample size of fights, but they still won a ton of, UFC fights, at least a high percentage of it. So I was hoping that this line was going to keep climbing. And in fact, at one point it got to like 160 or 70, but then it came back down around that 155 range. Today, for whatever reason, somebody slammed Ferreira. because I came home from the UFC, from the Apex, and I looked at the betting lines, and he's down to like 135, 132 at some of the sharper outs that I respect. That scares the hell out of me. Like that is not what I want to see when I have a ticket with Petrosyan in my pocket. But I just think his back's to the wall. I think it's a fight where he's going to keep it standing. I mean, Ferreira at least seems to have the grappling advantage according to the data, but I don't think he's going to be able to do anything with it. I like Petrosyan here. I bet Petrosyan. But like I said, if this closes, and I thought that the betting public would come in on the Ferreira side, seeing a guy coming off back-to-back losses like Petrosyan is, and the power of Ferreira, getting it done in the first round, and how he finishes fights. But like I jumped on it because I started seeing the market move in the direction I thought, and I didn't want to be last at a party. But like I said, now if this line closes Petrosyan minus 125, and I have a ticket in my pocket at 140, 145, I can admit to myself, now I'm hoping to be the product of good luck. Like, it wasn't a great bet at that number. We'll see how this line closes. I mean, there's still a couple days until fight night, but something happened today that some money came in on the Ferreira side, and it got a ton of respect from the betting market. That's what worries me. But I already have my ticket, so it's not like you could cancel a bet. So I'm on the side of Petrosyan. I hope he gets it done. Survive the first round, my man. Survive the first round. And hopefully the Armenians all come in from LA, and he's got a little home field advantage here at the T-Mobile. So we'll see. Like I said, I got Petrosyan. It was actually a big bet. I placed a decent sized bet on Petrosyan because I thought it was undervalued versus overvalued. And at least the market's telling me maybe that wasn't the case. We'll find out Saturday.
Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Alex Morono, who's 24-11, taking on Carlos Leal, who is 21-6. Currently, they got it Leal minus 775. The comeback on Morono's plus 575. So you get robbed, and now, sorry you got robbed, kid. Here's the ghost of Alex Morono. Hey, listen, shout out to Morono, man. Today he was honored with his 50 clean tests jacket. So respect to him.
Good for him.
Clean athlete. And then on the other side, if you watch Leal's last fight, you saw the insane amount of back knee this man had. So you got the most clean guy on the roster versus now, hey, Leal hasn't tested positive, so I can't say for sure. I don't know for sure. But what I'm saying is you do have a clean athlete in Morono taking on a guy who, according to the eye test, is on the kind of steroids that Kuniev tested positive for in that PFL fight. Now, that being said, Leal paid dues outside the UFC, man. He's been in there with real guys. He's beat real guys. I mean, let's pull up this resume, man. I mean, like, we're talking about a guy who, off the top of my head, I already know he beat Ray Cooper because I've been watching this guy in the PFL, and PFL came to Atlanta, so I saw him fight live before. Beat Ray Cooper, beat Chris Brown, not that Chris Brown, the celebrity, but Chris Brown, who was a dude doing his thing on the regional scene, who I actually wanted to see in the UFC, but he kept taking all these tough fights, so he kind of messed up his record. But he was a talented guy, and Leal's been doing his thing for a very, very long time. But so is Morono, man. But where I noticed the decline on Morono was the Court McGee fight. Court McGee, respect legend, the guy, one of two fighters in UFC history to die and come back to life. Shout out Matt the Immortal Brown. But I thought that Court McGee was completely past it. And I'm pretty sure, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure I laid minus 300 straight on Morono against Court McGee, thinking that it was going to be, smooth sailing. And the kind of sweat I had in that fight was the reason I didn't bet Morono against Nico Price the very next fight, where it was even more apparent that, hey, my boy Morono has been in so many wars. He's had a long career, and he's never necessarily been the most athletically gifted guy. And the thing about this guy, Leal, he's a hard man. So I think Leal gets it done. It's just, do you think he gets it done by knockout, a hard-fought decision, or do you think this is a massive overcorrection in terms of like, hey, you didn't even win that fight. I know according to everyone he won that fight, but according to reality, he didn't win that fight. So what do you think here?
Listen, man, they threw him in the deep end right away against a guy, who had won 4 of his UFC fights. He had a draw, I think 4-0-1 going in. And more importantly, he stuffed 17 of 19 takedowns. Like, he's as talented as they come, that's for sure. And like you said, he was tested pre-UFC, no doubt at all. Just look at his resume. There's no question there. The problem I have, I don't want to go long, is the betting line. When you're looking at a minus 70, 75, minus 180, here's what you're telling yourself, that he's got to win 89% of the time just for me to break even. Just to break even. I got to conclude he wins this fight 9 out of 10 times just to break even. So for me to have an edge, I have to conclude he wins this fight 95 out of 100 times. Well, like any at least sharp bettor and trader knows, like you have to factor a black swan in every model, in every handicap you're going to have, because it's like that day he could wake up feeling bad, he could be sick, he could be pissed off. Like there's just so many black swans that could happen to an athlete. You have to factor that in. Even give it just a 2 or 3% chance of something negative affecting him that isn't factored into the betting line. That's difficult to quantify. So I have to conclude almost that Leal wins this fight 95 out of 100 times, that there's got to be zero doubt in my mind that he wins this fight for me to go up to the window and bet with any kind of confidence, or else I have to play psychic and decide how he's going to get it done. So now I'm taking a difficult thing, which is already hard to do. I'll tell you this is factual. I know on gambling Twitter, everybody wins, but here's what I can promise you, because I speak to sports book owners, and here's what they told me. I used to think that 1% of sports bettors and sports betting accounts were profitable. So you get 100 guys in a room that bet sports, one of them has positive lifetime earnings. I was corrected this year by one of the biggest sports books offshore, who told me, since sports betting has come front and center, and now everybody's talking about it and everyone's doing it, it's no longer 1% of our accounts. It's now 0.5% of our accounts. So now it's 1 out of every 200 bettors actually have positive lifetime earnings. That's fact. Like what we're doing is very difficult, what you're trying to do. If you're taking this on as a profession to beat the sports books, it's a very difficult task. So if you're going to be laying minus 775s, minus 800s, you have to have a ton of conviction. It's almost a 95% chance he's going to win that fight for you to feel comfortable you have a decent edge. But more importantly, if you're going to try to play psychic and determine how it's going to happen, now you're making it one level even harder, especially in a sport like MMA, where there's just so many ways to win or lose a fight. So for me, a fight like this, again, unless I have real strong conviction on side A, or even on how it's going to play out, like where I say, based on the betting line to win by TKO or KO or DQ, based on the wins on submission, that it's off, based on what it should be, the true applied probability of that happening, then it's a different story. I don't see it here. So for me, I don't want to go long. This is a pass. This is a dog or pass situation in a fight where I don't think I'm going to sprinkle on Morono either. Again, but I couldn't bet Leal with any kind of confidence, thinking I'm getting the best of it. Again, if all I was going to do is bet Saturday and I had to pick a winner, gun the head, my family's life on the line, of course, Leal all day. But if I'm doing it for profit, I can't go out and confidently say, dude, this is the play. You go up to the window, lay that 775. You're placing a hell of a bet and feel confident that that's actually what happened. And with that said, he's probably going to go out there and get a finish early, make it look easy, and that he should have been a minus 1,200 favorite. But I'm just not there. I'm just not there.
Of course. No, yeah, I mean, I'm going to pick Leal, of course, just, but like I was saying earlier, Alex Morono just got awarded with his 50 clean test jacket. I look forward to Carlos Leal getting his 50 clean test jacket. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Myron Santos. He's 14-1, taking on Francis Marshall, who's 8-2. Currently, they got it. Santos minus 310. The comeback on Marshall plus 260. Very curious your opinion, Gianni, because so this line stood out to me, right? Like I was thinking that maybe I'd get involved with the underdog here, and you do a little bit of research and you see that, this guy, Francis Marshall, finally got out his comfort zone, moved to Florida, and like he's in the room. Like his main training partners are Grant Dawson, Movsar Evloev, and Mateusz Gamrot. Like if those guys can't teach you the game plan on how to beat Myron Santos, I don't know who can. But on the other side, Myron Santos. So if you watch his fight, if you watch his fight with Argueta on the regional scene, you saw there was a big hole in the wrestling. But what I really admire about Myron is he left Brazil, he got out of his comfort zone. Now he's at Extreme Couture, and he's really patched up the wrestling defense, a lot. Obviously, it's still a weakness in his game, but like he started to develop a really athletic sprawl. His get-up game is getting better. And then on the feet, this guy's got some nasty Muay Thai, man. Big leg kicks, flying knees, hooks, everything. And so I initially was like, should I take a shot on Marshall? But when I came down to it, I think his best chance is like a split decision, which don't get me wrong. Give me a split decision and a +2 with a +260 all day. It's just I'm not guaranteed. I'm not sure it's actually a split decision type fight. I'm just saying that's where I would kind of see Marshall winning should he win. Like a case where, for example, if you watch Marshall's last fight against Bazookia, if he follows that exact game plan here, whereas like as soon as the bell rings, he's already shooting a takedown, putting this guy up against the fence and starting the grind process. The only thing about it is you can grind a guy for 4 minutes of the round, then you separate and he lands 1 or 2 big shots, and that definitely overrides you pinning someone up against the fence because damage trumps all. So the path I see for Marshall is like 1 or 2 rounds of cage pushing, 1 round where he just gets his leg chopped off and they give him a split decision. Whereas the upside I see for Myron is if he can really start stuffing these takedowns on the feet, I think he picks apart Francis Marshall badly. And I, like I said, when these odds came out, I was interested in Marshall. And like, I love the fact that he's in the room with, like, you're not going to get better wrestling training for MMA than Gamrot, Evloev, and Grant Dawson. I mean, of course, Islam Habib, but that's not an option for this kid. So for what this kid can work with, it doesn't get any better than that. So I think he's going to come in here prepared. It's just that at distance, it's a mismatch. Francis has some hands. Francis has been making progress. I respect him. He's just a kid. But Myron has like some Edson Barboza qualities as far as his Muay Thai. And I think that's going to be the difference. So while I'm not crazy about this price, and you could argue it's dog or pass, I'm going to lean with the favorite here to get off on those kicks, get off on those combos, and show a higher level in striking in this fight.
So I was hoping you were going to talk me into betting the dog, because this is one dog that jumped out at me a little bit because of that path to victory. Meaning, if he implements that grappling game, that's those takedowns, and he actually makes it work, can he turn this into an ugly fight that wipes out a lot of the weapons on the Santos side? And more importantly, what you touched on, he's able to control him for enough minutes. Can he turn this into a split decision where Santos doesn't do damage, even though he's the elite striker, obviously, in this matchup? Because I don't think Marshall's been even knocked down at the UFC level, if I'm not mistaken. Like, if he's not able to do that damage, can he squeak out a split decision? So it's a dog that I was hoping to get talked into, because I haven't seen enough from Santos defending the takedowns that he's going to be facing on Saturday night. And like you said, the guys he's training with, coupled with the control time he's already shown at the UFC level, his path to victory is there. If he could avoid getting knocked out, the damage to where, he has no success being able to get him up against the cage or taking him down, like you said. So for me, it's a dog or pass situation, but I just haven't been convinced into betting this dog. Everyone I talk to says how deadly Santos is. And you haven't seen anything yet from him. Like, you haven't seen forget his ceiling, because the kid's 24 years old, but you haven't even seen a speck of his talent when it comes to the stand-up. And if that is the case, as tough as Francis Marshall is, and even though he's got the more UFC experience, he hasn't had the toughest level of competition. His 2 wins come against a combined 1-4. So it's not like, he's gotten those 2 wins against top guys. So it was the dogger pass for me, but I just haven't been able to bet this dog. Nick Kalikas actually bet this dog for a small bet. And that's what he almost like talked. I was like, oh, wait, and then am I leaning the right way? But I need a little more conviction to bet the Francis Marshall side.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying, man. And then really looking into this, I watched Myron Santos fight on The Ultimate Fighter against this kid, Edwin Cooper. Was that his name? Was it Edwin Macy or Edwin Cooper? Either way, the kid has real wrestling credentials. He's an All-American, all this stuff. Man, like, Myron was sprawling on this guy. Like, the first round, he kind of got held up against the fence, but after that, he didn't really give up too many advantageous positions, and he made Edwin work super hard to the point where second and third round, Buddy's shooting from a mile out. And like I said, Myron's really developed a super athletic sprawl, and he was picking him apart. So I could see similar things happen here, but yeah, like, before I watched any tape or looked into it and I just saw the number, I was like you, kind of like with Kuniev, where I was like, maybe this is a dog, maybe not, and watch them both win and we pass and we're pissed off. But yeah, just pure pick, sure, Santos, but I agree with you. It is dog or pass, but the path to victory for the dog, I don't think is a dominant one, but I don't need a dominant one at plus 260, right? So yeah, it's still Santos for me as a pick, but I don't know. It's tough because he's just a kid, man. He's just a kid. Like, no one's exempt from roadblocks along the way, that first L in the UFC, et cetera, et cetera. And Marshall has been paying dues, but yeah, there's definitely an athleticism difference here. And the skill gap on the feet is massive. And I've liked the improvements in the wrestling defense from Santos. So let's see what happens. Now, next up in the featherweight division, it's listed at bantamweight on Tapology because they are 2 bantamweights, but this fight's actually at featherweight.
Yeah, confirmed.
We got Chris Gutierrez. He's 21-5-2, taking on John Castaneda, who's 21-7. Currently, they got it. Castaneda -115. The comeback on Gutierrez is -105. I know you like Castaneda here, but before you go, I'm going to pick the other side, give you my argument, and then I'd like you to pick holes in my argument or whatever. Okay, so we can both agree that John Castaneda is the more well-rounded guy here, right? He's got more paths to victory, and that Gutierrez is more of the specialist, right? With the big leg kicks. The thing about it is, although Castaneda is the more well-rounded guy, I don't think he's special anywhere. I just think he's kind of average everywhere. Whereas Gutierrez being special at those leg kicks, well, the question is, are they going to work here? Gianni, I honestly think they are, man. I mean, if you go back to a fight between Nathaniel Wood and John Castaneda, I think that's the most, kind of similar look in terms of Nathaniel Wood is a big time leg kicker. Like, John Castaneda is not out here checking leg kicks, not getting out of the way of leg kicks, not making you pay for leg kicks. He just gives you free leg kicks. And that fight against Wood was the example where, Castaneda ate the most leg kicks out of any of his other UFC fights. But if you look at the actual just leg numbers of all his UFC fights, Buddy does not do a good job of blocking leg kicks or getting out of the way of them. So I actually think the one-dimensional attack of Chris Gutierrez, this is a spot where you can get away with chopping this man down. Now, let me be very clear. I don't have that much conviction because I still see this being a split decision type fight either way. Like, these guys fight at such close margins. I'd say obviously Castaneda has more volume and more ways to win, but it's like, I don't think his wrestling's that good. I don't think his hands are that good to where, like, for example, when Chris Gutierrez fought Song Yadong, there's such a power threat, athleticism threat, and just like, Song's like a legitimate top 5 guy, where Chris didn't feel comfortable playing his game. Chris was running away the entire time, where there's just not a big threat coming back at him from Castaneda. So I kind of do think Chris is going to be comfortable letting his leg kicks go. And at the end of the day, I just see it being a split decision type fight. I'm going to go with Chris Gutierrez to win a split decision here.
Well, the market definitely agrees with you, because there was a time you could have got Gutierrez as the betting underdog, and that's no longer the case. In fact, you're already seeing some of the sharper routes that I just checked, and he's up to like a minus 115, minus 105 take back on the Castaneda side. So definitely, as we approach fight night, the closer we get, you're starting to see the Gutierrez money come in. And like I said, bettors betting this far out, days in advance, are usually the sharper guys. Like most of the recreational guys that are betting all sports, all markets, yeah, they're still betting college basketball. They're not going to tie up their bankroll in college basketball and NBA for Saturday's UFC this far in advance. It's guys like yourself that are looking for value. It's sharp guys, betting syndicates, all that kind of stuff that we all talk about. With that said, I was hoping that that's what you would shed some light on, because what I saw was it was Castaneda, the more well-rounded guy. And what stuck out with me with the data was, is he going to be able to implement any kind of offensive wrestling, offensive grappling? Like, he averages almost 2 takedowns per 5 minutes attempts, not able to secure them, but he attempts them. Like, is he going to be able to push Gutierrez that way and turn it into more of an ugly fight? Because you know what Gutierrez wants to do. Like you said, he wants to chop at the legs. He wants to make it a stand-up fight. And he's as tough as nails. He's as tough as they come. But can Castaneda do that, especially up at 145? Like, how's that going to translate? Because I was worried at first with Castaneda having cut weight last week, and then
real quick. Sorry, thank you for bringing that up. So, 2 weight cuts in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's what worried me.
Let me say this. I know neither was to 135 pounds, and first one was 140. Now it's 145. But let's be very clear about this. This man does not walk at 145. He is 100% cutting weight again this week. So thank you.
And that's what worries me a little bit, because I like that he's going to have the 4-inch reach advantage over Gutierrez. I like that he, at least on paper, seems to have multiple paths, being more well-rounded. But it's the multiple weight classes, weight cuts that worries me, coupled with the betting line and the betting market disagreeing with me. And I respect it, because again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we know how few people are actually profitable betting sports. And when the sports books show respect at money being bet, and they're not willing to take a position, obviously they're respecting that cash, and they're starting to respect that Gutierrez cash more than I felt comfortable with, which is why I leaned Castaneda for a bet. And then I ended up today on the show using them just in a parlay, in a long shot parlay with 5 other fighters. So I had more confidence in Castaneda earlier in the week, but as the week is progressing, hearing guys like yourself that I respect in their opinions, I have less and less confidence that he's going to be able to use that 4-inch reach advantage, that he's going to be able to implement any of that grappling and turn it ugly. And then, like with the weight cuts, like you said, he's not walking around where it's not going to be a problem. So I'm not going to jump off Castaneda, but I don't have that confidence I had in him earlier in the week. I'm not urging anyone to run to the window and bet him. Now, if he gets the plus money, around that plus 120 range, then I think it's a decent bet, because like you said, if it's split decision and you're laying a little bit of chalk, it's not the best position to be in. And we know how the judges fare. It's not that they don't usually give the most obvious decisions when it turns into a split. So that's a little worrisome if you're laying any kind of chalk in a fight like this that could easily be a split decision. So not to prolong the argument, I like the Castaneda side. I'll stick with the Castaneda side, but I'm losing confidence as the days progress. That's for sure.
Now, last but not least, in the middleweight division, we got a match between Ozzy Diaz, he's 9-3, taking on Jordan Santos, who's 10-1. Currently, they got it. Are these odds right on my screen? I don't think they are. Hold on a second.
Santos is about a 2-1 favorite, 180, 185.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. Anyways,
at one point, Diaz was the 125 favorite. That's where he opened. In fact, he opened minus 120, went to 125 before money started coming in the other way. So you may have the opening number on Diaz up from earlier. You may have put that.
Yeah, ignore these numbers, guys. It's currently Diordan minus 180 and Oz Diaz plus 155. All right. I need your opinion on this, Gianni. Big time opinion on this. Like, I need you to talk to me about this because I've concluded that Ozzy Diaz, no disrespect at all, just have to be 100 because it's my fucking money on the line. I don't think Ozzy Diaz has any UFC business. It's not about the fact that he's gotten knocked out, in his contenders and his UFC and all that. Go watch all of his regional fights. And like one thing that Ozzy Diaz has in common, or excuse me, one thing that's consistent about Ozzy Diaz is he gets his ass whooped every single fight, win or lose. Like, he'll either just come out here and get starched, or if he wins the fight, he's taking a shit kicking and then comes back and wins, right? So no matter what the case is, Ozzy Diaz is reliable to get his ass whooped. The question is, what do we know about Diordan Santos? Now, here's what I know, Yanni. What I know is if you go back to his only loss where he lost to like a 13-9 guy and whatnot, like, dude, he was looking fat in that fight. Didn't even, it was like, yeah, this ain't going to pan out. But then you fast forward to his fight before Contender Series where he went 5 rounds and, he drops to middleweight. He looks like a brand new man. It was a big step in the right direction. Then he comes on the Contender Series against a hyped UK prospect, but all my buddies in the know about that specific UK prospect know that guy is a big time flake, but Diordan treated him like a big time flake. The only thing I'm having a bit of an issue with is that there's not much umph from Diordan Santos. It's kind of meat and potatoes, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with. I mean, my most profitable fighter to bet on ever is Belal Muhammad, who is a world champion, but is kind of meat and potatoes. He's not knocking too many people out. He's just winning. Is this a smash spot on Diordan Santos? Because this could be my last chance to fade Ozzy Diaz, or should I sit back because this might actually be a fight Diaz could win? Now, I'm picking Diordan Santos. Let's get that out the way. It's just him not being, that physically imposing and him just kind of just being like meat and potatoes, nothing special. Is that enough to get the job done here? Because if you give me a reason to fade Ozzy Diaz in the UFC, Yanni, I'm doing it. Will you give me that reason?
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of felt bad for the guy. I mean, you remember it was like, be like Joe Pyfer. That was his introduction to all of us when he got knocked out by Pyfer, and that's what Data said. Be like Joe Pyfer. Remember, the first week was terrible in the Contender. Then the next week, Pyfer gets the job done, and everything is back to normal. Then he gets his UFC debut, and more or less the same thing. It gets finished. So it appears like exactly what you touched on. Is he UFC level? With all that said, the guys he's lost to at least appear to be high level. Like, even with his last fight with Zhang, like, it's a guy who hasn't lost yet. He won his road to the UFC fight. He's 2-0 since, both performance bonuses.
Fighting Anthony Smith in a co-main event.
That's what I'm saying. So he's not losing to absolutely nobody. And then when I look at the Santos side, I like that he's 7 years younger. I like that he got his win in the Contender Series. With that said, prior to the Contender Series, he wasn't beating really anybody. I think the one fight prior to the Contender was the only one where more or less the opponent had a decent record. Otherwise, he's fought a combined 51-44. Like, guys, a 54% win percentage. So I don't know if he's capable of winning at the UFC level yet. Like, has he proven it to us? Sure, he won on the Contender Series, And like you said, he beat a guy that he should have beaten. He was supposed to beat. Guys in the know, your exact words, knew that was a fight Santos should get the job done in. Other than the 7-year edge that he has, I don't see all that much upside in laying this kind of price on Santos. I don't know whether it's, I feel bad for Diaz, you know what I mean? Being thrown to the wolves like he has from the Contender Series and then in his first fight. But the fact he's coming back, a chip on his shoulder, back to the wall, Santos has to prove it to me first. You got to beat that level fighter. Diaz hasn't won at the UFC level. So I'm not saying it's someone that wins at the UFC level, but he's at the UFC level. He's had a fight in the UFC. Yes, he's got finished. I get it. But Santos hasn't yet. And you're being asked to lay almost 2-1 on a guy that has a very, very soft strength of schedule. Now, are they throwing Diaz to the wolves again and building Santos up? Does he have that kind of potential? I was waiting to hear from you. And from what it sounds like, he isn't. He doesn't have that kind of pedigree where you expect stardom from him. And if you don't, I don't see laying 2-1 until I have a reason to lay 2-1 with a guy like Santos, even against Diaz, especially getting finished the way he has. Like, if anything, you're going to get an undervalued versus overvalued situation. So at the very least, you may be getting some line value. And, that's not the worst position to be in. So for me, it's a dog or pass situation. Diaz is going to have a nice 4-inch reach advantage. That kind of crosses out a little bit, at least the age, not as much, but at least a little bit towards the Diaz side. I wouldn't be surprised if Diaz goes out there and finally gets his first win in a while, because he's been more battle tested. Again, he hasn't passed the test being battle tested, but I haven't seen Santos do it either. So until I do, I'm not laying 2-1 on him. Dog or pass for me, but wouldn't be surprised if Diaz gets finished in the first round.
Okay. Well, Gianni, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me right here, right now on Half the Battle. The fans can follow you at Greek_gambler on the Gambler's Perspective on Fight Pass, on UFC On the Line. Keep killing it. I'm a big fan. Fuck the haters. You are the man. And I'm grateful not only that you took the time to hang out with me here, but that you had me on the Gambler's Perspective. Gave out that underdog play on Vinicius.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did, brother. Dude, I follow your stuff, bro. I honestly, I'm not stroking you because we know each other and I like you as well, but you're good at what you do. Like, that's just the bottom line. And you don't throw a ton of volume out there. You're very selective with your bets. So when someone like that, who's shown me a big enough sample size and knows what he's talking about, has a strong opinion, I'm going to respect it. Many times, if I don't have an opinion, I'll piggyback it. I'll tell you the truth just because I respect your opinion. And if I have a lean that way and I see you, it makes me feel even better. Like, again, I appreciate everything you said. I really do. But yeah, man, I give you mad props, bro. And I love what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. And I'm a fan. Me and Nick were actually talking about you today on the way home. Like, we're both fans of what you do, bro. So yeah, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your time with us as well.
Man, that means a lot to hear that, from someone I looked up to for so many years like Nick, and someone I have so much respect for like yourself. So just please keep doing what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
To all the fans, thank you all so much for all your support. Please smash that like button, hit the subscribe, leave us a comment. Y'all know where to follow me. Best Fight Picks on Twitter, Half the Battle Pod on Twitter. Half the Battle Pod on Instagram, Half the Battle Podcast on TikTok. And then you can find Half the Battle everywhere podcasts are found. Leave me a comment, share if you feel so inclined. I am truly, truly grateful for all your support. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.